So Kawasaki has been manufacturing the KLR650 since 1987. And there were basically two models, the Generation 1 from 87 to 2007, and then from 2008 to 2018, the Generation 2. In this video, we're going to look at the 10 major differences between the Gen 1 and Gen 2 KLR650. Hi, I'm Francois, and in this video we're going to chat about the main differences between the Gen 1 KLR650 and the Gen 2 KLR650. Now, they look very different, but in reality they are not that different. It's the same engine. There's a lot of stuff on the bikes that's the same. They can do the same thing. It's not more powerful or anything. And if you look around online, it's very difficult to find all the small little differences. Now, I've owned two of the Gen 1 KLRs. I've had a C model and an A model. I've ridden the Gen 2 KLR many times, different bikes, but it's very difficult to find all the little differences, and that's what we're going to look at here. Now, I'm not a KLR expert by any means, so there are some of you I know that will know way more than I do, so if I make a mistake, please comment below, or if there's other differences that's important to know of, please comment that below as well. So the Gen 1 KLR was manufactured from 1987 until 2007. I had a 2007 model, Gen 1, the very last ones. And then from 2008 until 2018, they made the Gen 2 model. So for 20 years, the Gen 1, 10 years, the Gen 2. And now in 2021, we have the Gen 3. We're just going to chat about the Gen 1 and Gen 2. The first and most obvious difference between the Gen 1 and Gen 2 KLR650s are the comfort mods or the comfort upgrades that they made. So it's a taller screen, a bigger fairing, there's a more comfortable, bigger seat, the luggage rack is slightly bigger, but that doesn't really change the bike. The only downfall of this for me for the Gen 2 is that if you crash the bike, there's more damage to it because of that fairing, and it's a hard plastic versus the old KLR that had soft plastic, just small little wind deflectors on the tank. So I dropped my KLR, the Gen 1, many times, and I just cable tied it back on. But a Gen 2, if you crash it, there will be more damage and it will be more expensive to fix. Now that said, it doesn't mean you can't ride comfortably on a Gen 1. I didn't have a taller windscreen. I rode with my wife many thousand kilometers on the back, and we could stick with a Gen 2 KLRs and even guys on BMWs and KTMs. If you stick to the speed limit, there's nothing wrong. The Gen 1 can do 140 kilometers per hour very easily all day long. So it's not a big difference, and it's not a reason to get rid of a Gen 1 to get a Gen 2 just for the comfort. The second difference between the Gen 1 and the Gen 2 KLR650s is probably the biggest difference, or the most meaningful difference, and that is that the Gen 2 KLR from 2008 had an alternator instead of a generator. So that means you cannot start the bike without the battery. On the old model, you could run the bike without the battery. So if the battery is completely dead, you can still push start it and get away. With the Gen 2, you are stuck if your battery dies completely. And that could be a deal breaker for many people, especially if you go off the beaten track. I've never had a problem ever with a battery on my KLR, but that's something to consider, and something that I actually didn't know before doing this research. Number 3, this is also something that I didn't know, is that the Gen 2 KLR has shorter springs, much shorter springs with a very long spacer in the forks, whereas the Gen 1 had a much longer spring. Now, I remember I replaced my old Gen 1 fork springs with progressive springs, and you can do the same with the Gen 2, and many people do these mods because the springs or the shocks in the front is not that great, even in the rear. So this is not a major issue if you're going to do the upgrades anyways, but it's worth it knowing this if you want looking at a Gen 2. Then number 4, this is also probably a biggish difference, is the weight. The Gen 2 is quite a bit heavier than the Gen 1, and then the Gen 3 now is even more heavy, well, a lot more heavy than the Gen 2. The Gen 1, the weight is difficult to find. I've read online anything from 412 to 420 pounds weight. The tank size of the Gen 3 is Gen 2 is the same, so we can compare weight with weight. The Gen 3 is 430 2 pounds. So it's between 10 and 20 pounds heavier than the Gen 1. And I remember my Gen 1, it didn't feel that heavy. So that is definitely a consideration. So number 5, the ground clearance. The Gen 1 had 9.4 inches of ground clearance. The Gen 2 is 8.3 inches. So it's about an inch shorter or lower than the Gen 1. And the Gen 1 is loved because it's more capable off-road, because it's lighter, and because of the better suspension and the ground clearance. So that is one of the reasons why people prefer the Gen 1 to the Gen 2. And then obviously those plastics that can damage if you crash it. The 6th difference between the Gen 1 and Gen 2 KLR650 is the swing arm. Now the first generation KLR had a box swing arm, very simple square or rectangular tube swing arm. And then they went for this, I don't know whether it's cast or molded swing arm. I'm not sure what the difference is or why they did it or what the advantage or disadvantage is. But for some reason on the Gen 3, the 2021 model, they went back to the old box shape swing arm. Anyways, it's maybe just a look thing, I'm not sure. Then number 7, the dash of the Gen 2 KLR is very different. It's a built-in dash, almost like a car, with these 2 big dials, analog dials for the speed and the tacho. I don't very much like it. The older one was much simpler and had just a more classic look. The new one has this cursive or italic numbering on it as well that just looks tacky. But anyways, a lot of people complain about it, but it's a non-issue really. They both show the same things, but it's just something that you have to look at it all day long. I just like the old one better. The 8th difference between the Gen 1 and Gen 2 KLR650 is the disc brakes or the rotors. The Gen 1 had solid discs, whereas the Gen 2 had the petal-shaped discs. And as far as I can understand it, is that the petal discs dissipate heat better, so there's less fade, but the solid discs or the round discs has better stopping power, but over time it will fade more because of the heat. But with the Gen 3, they went back to the solid ones, the non-petal shaped discs. So it was probably better. I'm not sure. Please comment below if you know more. And then number 9, differences between the Gen 1 and Gen 2 KLR650 is the doohickey, or the balancer's chain tension mechanism lever was upgraded, or it was a slightly thicker or bigger. I've seen the difference between the two. Maybe I'll post a photo if I can find one. But it didn't fix the problem altogether. I still know of people who had problems with the Gen 2 doohickey braking, and it's still something we're looking to see whether it was fixed on the 3rd generation KLR650. So still a problem. They did do some tweaks to it or design a new one, but it's still not the best one. They should just do the Eagle mic upgrade, or just buy it from him and put that in, then we don't have to worry about it anymore. Anyways, still something to know. And then finally, the 10th thing, and this is probably the most important thing when buying a Gen 1 versus a Gen 2 KLR650, is the looks. I like the look of the first one. I don't particularly dislike the look of the second one, but this is, I think, the gripe for most people, is the way it looks. They just don't like the look of the second one. That's weird, funny, sharp beak, and the headlight that looks almost like a sport bike. The old one has a more classic look. I like the look of the first one, but in all honesty, if I get a KLR again, I might even go for the Gen 2 just to own it for a bit, because I've had the Gen 1 and I loved it. So, yeah, in the end, when you decide between the two, the real thing is get on the bikes, see which one you like best, which one you get the best deal on. They're both awesome bikes, and they are both basically the same. You can do the same upgrades to each bike, so not much in it. Please let me know if you have any other differences, or if I made a mistake in this, and comment below, and give this video a like so more people can see it, and I'll see you next week.